Guess what? I sold my house, my brother-in-law Kevin said. My husband and I were really surprised, and we didn't know what to say. But the most surprised person was my mother-in-law. She looked really upset and asked, "Why? Weren't you supposed to come get me?" Kevin tried to calm her down and started to explain. "I'm Sandra. I work from home with my husband Robert. We love our peaceful workplace where we can take breaks whenever we need," I explained. Then my mother-in-law moved in with us. We were doing fine financially, so we didn't mind. "Why don't you both go out to work?" My mother-in-law would look at us with disapproval as she asked this. It made me feel tired, like we were going through the same thing all over again. The first time she questioned us like this, we explained that we were working from home. "But are you actually working? I've told Robert the same thing. Are you paying attention? When will you two get serious about work? Aren't you thinking about your future?" My mother-in-law couldn't understand our job. "Oh, I'm so worried. I wonder if I made a mistake coming to this house. Maybe I should have gone to Kevin's house." She would often sigh and say this. The Kevin she mentioned is Robert's brother. He married a wealthy woman named Carol, and it seems like he's living off her money now. My mother-in-law didn't know about this. Kevin asked us not to tell her. My goodness, Kevin's house isn't small like ours. It's huge, like a castle from another country. Well, I'm thinking of moving to Kevin's house eventually, which will be my new home. My mother-in-law would often say, hoping Kevin would come to take her there. But we knew deep down that Kevin and his wife would never come to get her. You see, Robert once suggested to his brother that their mother could live with him. But Kevin didn't want to live with her. So we ended up living together even though we were criticized for working remotely and called unemployed. We just accepted that's how she is. But then something happened that made it impossible for us to keep putting up with it. Out of nowhere, we got a call from Kevin. "He's coming over this weekend," he said abruptly, then hung up before we could say anything. What do we do now? That guy hasn't changed at all. Robert and I were puzzled. And hearing our talk, my mother-in-law leaned in, looking excited. "He's coming to take me. Please help me get ready to move," she said, pulling Robert towards her room. "Mom, Kevin isn't coming to take you. He probably called for some other reason," Robert said, worried. "But he didn't mention anything about picking you up when he called, did he?" I added. "I'm so tired of this house. You probably want to turn me into a housekeeper, but that's not happening," my mother-in-law replied with a scoff. We couldn't understand why she was thinking like that. Since she came to stay with us, she pretty much did whatever she pleased, didn't help with any chores, and relied on the money we gave her. Well, we weren't going to force her to stay, so we packed her bags as she asked and waited for Kevin to arrive. During the weekend, my brother-in-law and his wife showed up at our place. As soon as they walked in, they had these suspiciously friendly expressions on their faces. I had a bad feeling about it. Just then, my mother-in-law came out, looking excited. "You're finally here. Let me tell you, Sandra is not good at doing housework at all. So I have to do them, and Robert completely ignores me. Isn't that terrible?" she said, acting like she was the victim. Then brushed past Robert and welcomed her brother into our home. "You guys don't mistreat Mom. There's no way we're doing that. We're giving her an allowance, and she's eating whatever she likes. Plus, Sandra is handling the house chores," Robert said, looking conflicted, but his brother seemed suspicious. Robert has always been a bit clueless, probably treating Mom badly without even realizing. And it seems Sandra isn't the considerate type. "That's right. Kevin really understands me," she said. Hearing this conversation, Robert and I couldn't help but frown. Despite this, we decided to entertain our guests and led the couple to the living room. We all sat around the living room table, with Robert and me on one side and the couple on the other. "Now, why are you just sitting there? Serve the tea," my mother-in-law demanded. "Huh? I thought you were going to make the tea, mother-in-law. What's this about making an old woman work? See, Kevin, Sandra is like this," she said, even pretending to cry. I was so stunned by her behavior that I couldn't even respond. Once I served the tea, the mood became serious. The truth is, we sold our house. Robert and I were surprised and shocked by Kevin's words. But the one who was most shocked was my mother-in-law. "Why? Why would you do something like that? Didn't you come to pick me up?" she asked, flustered, confronting Kevin. He tried to calm her down, saying, "Take it easy," and then began to explain. "We'd been in debt, and even though we could pay it off by selling the house, we're broke and have nowhere to live, so we came here to see if we could stay. What debt? I tried to start a business, but it didn't work out. These things happen, you know, Kevin said with a laugh. Robert and I sighed in frustration. We only need to stay until we find a new house. Please, we have no one else to turn to, the couple pleaded, bowing their heads together. I think our expressions must have been mixed, but if they had nowhere else to go, we felt obliged to help. We agreed to let them stay temporarily in our house. However, we made it clear that they had to find their own place within a month. Okay, Kevin said, still laughing, and went to prepare for their move. After they left, my mother-in-law sat quietly, looking lost in thought. Robert and I assumed she was still processing everything. The next day, the couple's belongings arrived promptly. This much. Where are we going to put it all? This is going to be tricky. We might have to sell some things or rent a storage unit, my mother-in-law said as we discussed what to do with Kevin's belongings. Then, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell on us. I've been thinking, wouldn't we be more secure in the future if Kevin stays here, so you freeloaders can leave, can't you? My mother-in-law's sudden statement left my husband and me shocked. If you insist, I can tolerate Robert staying, but I don't need a wife who can't do anything. Get a divorce then, Sandra's space can be used for all these packages, my mother-in-law eagerly demanded, looking at my husband for approval. What are you talking about? He reacted, as he usually did, completely surprised. Then my brother-in-law and his wife arrived. My mother-in-law greeted them happily, but I was still shaken by her earlier words. My husband decided to ignore the situation for the moment and asked his brother to deal with the packages. There were more than I expected. Try to reduce the number, rent a storage unit, or sell some if necessary, my husband said. His brother glared at him and said, "What are you talking about? These packages are important. How could I sell them? And what if they get stolen from a locker? What if they get damaged? Are you going to take responsibility, bro?" My husband shook his head at his brother's selfish behavior. This is our house, you know. It's only fair that you endure some inconvenience, right? If you don't like it, find a place to live quickly and leave. But then my mother-in-law shouted, "What are you talking about? Didn't I just say if you two are not happy with Kevin and the rest, you can leave? You're basically freeloaders. You're not needed in this house. Kevin is trying to start a business and all you two do is loaf around the house, doing so-called remote work. You're a nuisance." It was like my mother-in-law was acting as if it were her own house. My husband and I exchanged looks in disbelief. My brother-in-law and his wife were surprised at my mother-in-law's words, but then they started to smirk. "That might not be a bad idea, Mom. It sounds good. It's a hassle to find a new place, so we could stay here. So why don't you sell this house to us, Carol?" My brother-in-law said, "I feel uneasy with you two around, so it would be better if you sold this place to us. And it seems like our mother-in-law agrees with us, so sell this place to us." My husband and I were stunned by their words. "What nonsense are you?" my husband started, but was cut off by my mother-in-law, who smirked. "See, both Kevin and Carol are saying the same thing. So what will you do, Robert? If you're going to divorce, you can stay here." My mother-in-law glared at me triumphantly. I prepared myself to respond, but my husband spoke up first. "Why you get to say whatever you want? Why should Sandra have to leave?" My husband was visibly angry, his voice raised. "Don't raise your voice like that. It's better without a burden around, right?" My mother-in-law retorted. But my husband responded with frustration, "You don't understand anything. This is Sandra's house." At my husband's words, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife gasped. My husband continued, adding to the tension. "This is the house that Sandra bought for our life together." What are you saying?" "There's no rule saying only the husband can buy the house. Besides, Sandra covers all of Mom's allowance and living expenses. Sandra said she'd take on that responsibility because your pension is minimal, and it would be hard for you to have financial freedom with just that." Robert glared intensely at his mother. Despite this, my mother-in-law seemed incredulous, looking at me and snickering in disbelief. "Unbelievable. Sandra just sits on the computer all day. She doesn't even do housework properly. Wasn't my allowance coming out of my pension? Otherwise, there's no way Sandra could afford to give me $500 a month." Moreover, my mother-in-law continued, "Sandra is the one managing my pension, isn't she? You might have told Robert otherwise, but I'm sure you're dipping into my pension." She puffed up her chest and glared at me. I glared back. refusing to back down. It's true that I've succeeded as a business owner. You're lying. Stop spreading lies about my wife. You should divorce this lying wife already. You can live here with me, Kevin, and Carol. Besides, there's no proof that Sandra isn't earning money. Here it is. With that, I pulled out my paycheck and showed it to her. The sight of it left my mother-in-law, Kevin, and his wife stunned. Since Mom moved in, we haven't used any of her pension. If Mom ever wanted to leave, Sandra has been managing it so she could live independently. But instead, Mom, you've been bossing Sandra around, interfering with her work. You're the problem. If you don't like Sandra, you should leave right now. I don't believe any of this, my mother-in-law retorted, refusing to listen to anything we said. Afterward, Robert and I sighed in disbelief, cutting her off. Well, if that's how you feel, we'll pack our things and move to a new house. You guys will be stuck with a mortgage. But if that's okay with you, don't come crying to us for help. If you insist, mother-in-law will leave even with a pension. Maintaining your lifestyle will be challenging, but I guess that can't be helped, can it? At our words, my mother-in-law turned beet red and yelled at us to leave. Wait, you can't be serious. We don't have to do that, do we? Kevin and his wife tried to intervene, but my mother-in-law gave us a fierce look and said, "Don't you dare talk back, Kevin. You're going to be a CEO, aren't you? I don't mind you using my pension, so just start a company and show us how successful you can become. I'll show you what happens when you defy us." Her words were filled with intensity. Hearing this, we decided it was best to no longer be involved with her or Kevin's family and left the house. Of course, the mortgage on the house remained, but we changed the ownership to Kevin's name. Some time had passed since then. While there was still some lingering dissatisfaction from that incident, being freed from my mother-in-law's sarcasm, we were able to return to our normal routine. While we were working from home like usual in our new apartment, my mother-in-law called my husband, Kevin, crying. She said Kevin took her pension money and disappeared a week ago. She and Carol, Kevin's sister, were left alone in the house and needed help. My mother-in-law was too upset to talk, so she passed the phone to Carol. Carol explained that since Kevin's failed business and selling the family home, their parents had cut ties with them. They hadn't been able to reach their parents since then. My husband sighed and said, "I knew it. He told them not to involve us because we had warned them before leaving. He said they could report Kevin missing to the police, but that we wouldn't help them." After hanging up, I was shocked by my husband's reaction, but he believed they deserved what happened, and I ended up agreeing with him. They kept calling my husband's phone numerous times. Whenever he reluctantly answered, Carol would cry about not knowing how to report Kevin missing. We were surprised she didn't know what to do and advised her to call the police. However, despite their efforts, they couldn't locate Kevin. Just when we thought Kevin might remain missing, we heard the news that he had been arrested for robbing a bank in another state. Apparently, he did it to pay off his debts. This wasn't his first time committing such a crime, and it seemed he was likely facing a significant jail sentence. Carol is stuck living with my mother-in-law in their old house because she can't go back to her parents' home. She's unsure if she'll divorce Kevin, but that's not her priority right now. She's working with a temp agency, struggling with her first job, but somehow managing to get by each day. My mother-in-law is in a tough spot too. Kevin took all her pension, and now she's left to repay his debts. She started working part-time to make ends meet. While my husband and I feel bad for them, we've decided not to help and cut off contact. They're experiencing the tough realities of life my mother-in-law often talked about. Despite the challenges since my mother-in-law moved in, my husband and I are relieved to have returned to our peaceful routine.
Anyone who can't speak is not family. Get out! What are you two doing? I pushed aside my son William and his wife Stella, holding my grandchild Alice protectively as she clutched her cheek in pain, glaring at them. William and Stella, showing no remorse, continued to insult Alice for her inability to speak. Seeing this, I decided to raise her myself and took her home with me. 10 years later. Suddenly, William and Stella appeared. "We missed you, Alice. We're family, right? Let's live again together. We're not family with idiots. Please leave." I am Ashley, a 60-year-old housewife. A few years ago, I lost my husband and have been living alone in a large house since then. I considered living with William and Stella, but I decided against it. We just don't get along. Besides, I might end up helping out at the store they run. My body doesn't move as it used to when I was younger, and honestly, I'm not good with customer service. If we lived and worked together, it would only cause stress for both sides. So, I decided it was better not to live together. Even after my husband passed away, William never suggested living together. I was grateful for that. Having been freed from childcare and nursing care, I wanted to enjoy my time alone. But once I started living alone, it was lonelier than I had imagined. Having spent so much time on housework, childcare, and nursing care, I had no hobbies or friends. I spent my days killing time watching reruns of TV dramas. Even when I tried to take up new habits, they never lasted. In my dull daily life, my 2 grandchildren were a huge comfort. Nicole, 10 years old, and Alice, 6 years old. Both of them are very adorable girls. Nicole is pretty and good at charming adults. On the other hand, Alice is a bit clumsy and quiet. Compared to her pretty and charming sister, Alice often felt lonely. I love both of them, but I especially sided with Alice. That's because she seemed to be avoided by William, Stella, and Nicole. William and Stella visit about once every 2 months with the grandchildren. "Grandma," Nicole says cheerfully as she runs up to me. Her clothes are always new, and her long hair is neatly styled. On the other hand, Alice's clothes are hand-me-downs from Nicole and look worn. Her hair is unkempt and unattended. Alice, who once loved to talk and chatted a lot when she first learned to speak, has become quiet lately. Looking down with a gloomy face unlike the smiling Nicole. I greeted Nicole. "Nice to see you." Then I squatted down to speak to Alice. "Alice, welcome. Thank you for coming." "Yeah. I have your favorite snacks today. Let's eat together." "Yeah." "Grandma, what about mine?" "Of course, I have yours too. Let's go inside." As I held my grandchildren's hands, William and Stella called out as they got out of the car. "Mom, long time no see. Here, we brought you a gift." "Oh, thank you. How have you two been?" "Make yourselves comfortable." "Thank you, Ashley." I invited William, Stella, and the grandchildren into the house, offering them drinks and snacks. William and Stella only talked to Nicole, ignoring Alice completely. When I tried to talk to her, Nicole would interrupt, or William and Stella would change the subject. I noticed how William and Stella treated Alice, but I thought it best not to interfere too much and just observed. However, I would come to regret that decision. One day, I had planned to visit William and Stella's house, bringing along some of their favorite snacks. When I arrived, I reached out to ring the doorbell. At that moment, I heard William shouting from inside the house. "Don't just stand there! Say something!" Surprised, I put my hand on the front door and found it unlocked. Without hesitation, I walked down the hallway and realized the voice was coming from upstairs. "It's your fault I'm embarrassed at school because you won't speak." As I climbed the stairs, the shouting continued, and then I heard a loud, dry sound as if something had been struck. I opened the door to the room where the noise came from and saw William, Stella, and Nicole berating Alice. Alice was holding her cheek, looking like she was about to cry, while Nicole was shaking her hand as if it hurt. "Hey, Alice! Nicole hit you, right? Can't you even say ouch? If you can't speak, you're not part of this family. Get out!" "What are you all doing?" I pushed past William, Stella, and Nicole, hugging Alice protectively and glaring at them. For a moment, they looked surprised but quickly recovered and said, Mom, what are you doing here? You should have rung the doorbell before coming in. That's right, Ashley, you're being rude. The ones being rude are you. Surrounding a child and yelling at them. William, you're her father. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? And Nicole, why did you hit Alice? For the first time, I scolded Nicole loudly. She looked scared for a moment but then said, "But," and looked down. Stella pulled Nicole close and said, "Hey, don't blame Nicole," while glaring at me. I glared back without backing down. Taking her side after she hit Alice was not how a mother should act. Watching this, William pointed at me and shouted, "Mom, what are you thinking? Get away from that idiot. The only idiots here are you. Apologize to Alice." What? Who's going to apologize? William, Stella, and Nicole showed no remorse and continued to insult Alice. Alice, in my arms, grabbed my clothes weakly with a vacant look on her face. Had they been treating her like this all along? Without thinking, I picked Alice up and declared, "I will take care of Alice. I can't leave her here." Leaving the three of them stunned, I hurried out of the room with Alice. William stood there for a while, then approached with a sly smile. "Mom, this is a relief." I didn't know what to do with her anymore. As I stared in disbelief at William's words, Stella appeared behind him. She was carrying an old small suitcase and a backpack. "These are her things. Please take care of the rest." With that, Stella handed me the bags roughly. Neither Alice nor I could say anything, just looking up at William and Stella's faces. Both of them were clearly happy that Alice was leaving the house. Frustrated, I left the house without saying anything. When we got home, still silent, I placed her luggage in the hallway. Then she sniffled softly. When I looked at her face, I saw she was biting her lip and crying. I hugged her and stroked her back. "Alice, you've been through so much. I'm sorry I couldn't help you until now. But it's okay now. From now on, I'm on your side. I'll protect you." From then on, I started living with Alice. Alice, who had been hurt by her parents, didn't speak. Not even a single good morning. According to her teacher, she wasn't talking to her classmates or teachers at school either. Worried, I took her to the hospital to see a doctor. Alice was diagnosed with selective mutism. The doctor said that the strong stress and anxiety from her family had made her unable to speak. Now that her environment had changed, he said she would eventually be able to talk if given time. Feeling relieved, I bought her a cute notebook and pen on our way home from the hospital. "Alice, if you want to tell me or anyone else something, write or draw it in this notebook. And little by little, let's practice saying the words out loud." Alice immediately opened the notebook and started writing with the pen. Watching quietly, she showed me the page. On it were the words, "Thank you, Grandma," and a drawing of me. Alice opened her mouth, trying hard to speak. But she couldn't get the words out, and she looked down sadly. "Alice, you're doing great. Let's keep going like this. Well done." When I patted her head, Alice looked up and gave a faint smile. She began using the notebook and pen to communicate at school too. Perhaps gaining confidence, she gradually started to speak, and within 2 years, she could talk normally. Grandma, guess what happened at school today?" As soon as she got home, Alice would eagerly tell me about her day at school. Seeing her so full of life, I felt truly relieved. One day, I visited the school for a parent-teacher meeting. When we entered the classroom, a kind-looking teacher greeted us. Alice and I greeted back and sat down. As we talked about how she was doing at school and at home, Alice squirmed shyly. Alice's grades have been improving steadily since last year. Look at this. The teacher showed us a report card. The graph showed a gradual increase since she started living with me, and now it was quite high. I think it's because she is very studious. Recently, she's been buying difficult books and workbooks and studying every day, I said as I patted Alice's head. Since she began to speak, she had become very diligent. At home, she would open difficult books and study, and on test days, she would show me her perfect score sheets. All those perfect scores were framed and displayed, and I looked at them with pride. I see. How about having an IQ test done at the hospital? An IQ test? I asked back. She might be gifted. And the teacher replied, gifted children are those who have exceptionally high abilities from a young age. Alice's intelligence is remarkable. Because she had such a wonderful talent, the suggestion was to take an IQ test to prepare the right educational environment for her. I immediately took Alice to the hospital to take the IQ test. The result was as the school teacher predicted, she was gifted. I couldn't hide my surprise at how amazing her abilities were. I asked Alice, "How's your studies in elementary school? Are you having fun?" Alice replied, looking bored. "To be honest, it's too easy and boring. I want to study much more difficult things. But when I tell the teacher, they get troubled." Listening to her story, I thought deeply. Can Alice do the kind of study she wants in this situation? What she probably wants is middle school or high school level study. Can Alice, who hasn't even graduated from elementary school yet, study that? I consulted with her teacher. The teacher told me that there is a region where the skipping grade system is prevalent. If we go there, Alice would be able to study what she wants. I remembered that my late husband's brother works in that area. I hadn't been in contact with him since my husband passed away, but he might be able to help. When I contacted him for advice, he said he would support our life there. Relieved, I suggested to her that we move. If Grandma is with me, I want to go. But I want to go after I graduate elementary school with my friends. Okay, I understand. Alice smiled, looking relieved. She made many memories in elementary school and graduated safely. She exchanged contact information with her friends, so they can stay in touch even after moving. I didn't tell William and Stella about the move. I thought that if they knew their abandoned daughter was gifted, they would try to take her back to use her. Alice quickly adapted to life in the new place and studied by skipping grades. I supported her with all my might. I'm enjoying studying more than before. Seeing Alice speak happily, I felt truly glad that we moved. Her talent was truly wonderful. A few years later, she entered Harvard University and studied business management, and then started her own company. I will repay Grandma for everything, Alice said enthusiastically. I already felt that she had repaid me enough, because she had grown up to be a fine adult. Her achievements were covered in the news and spread around the world, making her famous. Probably, her name is quite well known now. What do William and Stella think of Alice's success? I hope they regret all the terrible things they did. 10 years after Alice started her company, we moved again for work. As we were living in a new apartment, the doorbell rang. Thinking it was a delivery, I opened the door without any caution. Long time no see, Mom. How have you been? William. And Stella, why are you here? Seeing their faces, I was surprised. We had changed our contact information and moved far from where we used to live, so how did they find us? Ignoring my surprise, Stella called into the house. Alice, are you there? We've come to see you after a long time. What do you want? Stay away from her. Don't be cold, Mom. We are Alice's parents. Yes, Ashley. Alice is here, right? Let us meet her. Hey, don't just barge in. Before I could stop them, they pushed past me and entered the house. As I tried to hold them back, Alice appeared in the living room. What's going on, Grandma? Whoa, wait, what? Alice was just as surprised by the sudden visitors. I turned away, feeling awkward. Meanwhile, William and Stella looked delighted to finally see Alice. Oh, Alice! We missed you so much! You've grown so much! Stella tried to hug her, but Alice pushed her away. If you want to talk, do it in the living room. I'll make some coffee. Please wait on the sofa. Alice said coldly as she started preparing coffee in the kitchen. William and Stella made themselves comfortable on the sofa, sharing their memories with Alice without restraint. Worried, I spoke to Alice, who winked at me and gestured to let her handle it. Facing them, I soon heard the main reason for their visit. The business they had gone under due to poor management. Since starting her job, Nicole had cut off contact, and they didn't know where she was or what she was doing. Without work, they were now living in poverty, unsure when their savings would run out. Hey, Alice. Can you support us? You left home when you were 6, but until then, we raised you. It's time to repay your parents. Alice, you must have felt lonely without us all these years. But now, let's live together. Let's make up for lost time and create new memories as a family. I couldn't bear to watch them, pleading pathetically with Alice. I wondered where I had gone wrong in raising my son to become this kind of adult. Lost in self-blame, I was brought back to reality by Alice's voice. No, I won't. You're not my family. My only family is Grandma. Leave now. She wore a cold smile I had never seen before. Alice, please. Wait, don't do this. Alice refused to listen to their desperate pleas to live together. She forced them out, locking the door behind them. Through the window, I saw them walking away, shoulders slumped. Grandma. What? Let's move. She smiled as she spoke. I learned she had been secretly planning to build a house for us to live in together. It was designed to be accessible for me. Thank you, Alice. When I thanked her, Alice smiled sheepishly. A few months later, we moved into our new home. Thanks to Alice's thoughtful design, I lived comfortably. The walls were adorned with memories from our past. There was even the notebook and pen we had bought when we first started living together. Every time I saw it, I was moved to tears. Today, I think I'll cook Alice's favorite meal. With that thought, I started cooking in the kitchen. I've never had a subordinate with such low education like you before, she said with a condescending tone. Hearing those words, I was taken aback, my eyes widening in shock. What on earth was she misunderstanding about me? Since when did I become your subordinate? I asked, my voice laced with confusion. As I posed that question, the notorious female director's mouth fell open in surprise. When I revealed my true position to her, her attitude suddenly underwent a drastic transformation. I'm Sarah Ingram, 34 years old. After graduating from high school, I'm currently working as a company employee. When I was young, my dad left our home. Since then, I've been living with my mom in a single-parent household. However, my parents didn't go through a tumultuous divorce, so they still keep in touch even now. The reason for their divorce was a slight mismatch in their lifestyles. One day, my dad suddenly started his own company and became so engrossed in work that he neglected his family, causing my mom to become resentful and demand a divorce. Despite that, my dad still cared about me and my mom, faithfully continuing to pay child support for me. My dad and I would meet up a few times a year to have meals together and stay connected. When it came time to decide my career path, I also sought advice from my dad. He always watched over us from a slight distance, and my decision not to attend college was also influenced by his guidance. Around the time I graduated high school, I didn't have any clear aspirations or dreams. I spent my days idly without any definite goals, and my grades weren't particularly good either. Even though I considered going to college, I couldn't grasp what I truly wanted to study and found myself simply going along with the flow, hoping to pursue higher education. In response to my situation, my dad told me that once I started working, I would naturally discover what I wanted to study. At the time, I thought it was unusual not to go to college these days, but after hearing about my dad's experiences, I decided to trust his advice. When I discussed this with my mom, she readily accepted my decision not to attend college. From then on, I entered society, interacted with people from various backgrounds, and began to find what I wanted to learn. Before I knew it, I started thinking that I wanted to enroll in college and study, even if it meant taking online courses once I settled down. On days when I finished work early, I would proactively study using the reference books I had bought myself. If my high school self could see me now, I probably wouldn't be able to imagine this situation in the slightest. And so, I spent my days living a fulfilling life. Then one day, a young woman named King joined my company as a mid-career hire. According to rumors, she was highly educated and bilingual. Moreover, she had attended a renowned university overseas. I was surprised that such a talented person had joined the subsidiary company where I worked. Surely, in a few years, she would be transferred to the head office and be on the fast track to an elite career. There was another surprise for me. I was chosen to be King's mentor. At this point, I was an expert who had been working at the company for over a decade. Being well-versed in my job and recognized by those around me, I was told that I was the perfect fit to mentor this exceptional new employee. Feeling proud, I promptly went to greet King. "Starting today, I'll be your mentor. My name is Ingram. It's a pleasure to meet you," I said with a friendly smile, eagerly anticipating what kind of person she would be. I imagined that she would be quicker-witted than me and would swiftly and efficiently tackle her work. I had conjured up this image of her in my mind. However, I would later come to learn that King was a person who greatly defied my expectations. "It's a pleasure to meet you too. I'll do my best." King greeted me energetically during our first conversation. From day one, she took a liking to me and obediently followed my instructions. Over the next few days, I passionately taught King everything I knew about the job. She easily met my expectations. Moreover, it was a pleasure to work with her, as she was intelligent and would remember everything I taught her after just one lesson, which amazed me. After a few months, I thought I had built a great relationship with her. Then one day, around the time when the initial training was coming to an end, King approached me hesitantly during our lunch break. I have a question. Would it be all right to ask?" she inquired. "A question? Sure. As long as it's something I can answer," I replied. "Thank you. Well then, would it be okay if I asked about your educational background, Miss Ingram?" I was taken aback, not understanding the intent behind her question. King apologized to me, saying, "I'm sorry for asking so suddenly. Your way of teaching is so easy to understand, Miss Ingram. I was curious about what university you graduated from and what you studied. I was hoping to learn from your example," she explained. Sensing her genuine admiration, I understood where it was coming from. It was my first time being looked up to like this, so I felt happy, and a smile spread across my face. However, I was just a high school graduate and didn't have the impressive educational background she was envisioning. I'm flattered that you think so highly of me, but I'm afraid I might disappoint you. Unlike you, I only graduated from high school, I confessed. I answered her honestly. Instantly, her eyes turned cold. By the time I realized I might have said something wrong, it was too late. Incredibly, her attitude towards me completely changed that very afternoon. Even though she had always listened attentively to me before, she suddenly stopped taking my words seriously. Despite being bewildered by her abrupt change in demeanor, I still believed in her and poured my heart into mentoring her. However, she started treating me with disdain, as if mocking my efforts. You had a lot of work in the morning, so you must be tired? Maybe we should slow down the pace a bit? I asked, concerned about King. But she curtly replied, not really, refusing to change her attitude. The afternoon ended on that note. I went home with mixed feelings weighing on my mind. Ever since that incident, King's treatment of me had become harsh. She seemed to be spreading strange rumors about me within the company, and recently, even my colleagues had become somewhat cold towards me. One day, when my boss summoned me, I immediately headed to his office. Is something the matter? I inquired. My boss looked at me with a grim expression. Worrying that I might have made a mistake, I felt a wave of tension course through my body. Well, I thought you might be having some troubles with King, he said. What? I blurted out, taken aback by his words. Prefacing with, I heard a rumor, he proceeded to share the details with me. In short, the rumor claimed that I had been jealous of King's educational background and had become harsh towards her. Having no recollection of such behavior, I blinked in surprise, swallowed hard, and fell silent. You might be harboring an inferiority complex about being a high school graduate, but if you treat your subordinate too harshly, you'll regret it later on. He cautioned, giving me a probing look, and I was shocked by his words. Immediately after that, I called King into the conference room. I wanted to discuss the rumors with her. Somehow, I had a hunch that the source of the rumors was King herself. After all, there had been no such rumors before she joined the company. I couldn't understand why she was treating me with such contempt, but if things continued like this, it might hinder both of our work. Moreover, perhaps out of concern for us, the atmosphere within our department had lost its former tranquility. As soon as I saw King enter the conference room, I quickly approached her. Miss King, did I do something to offend you? I just heard a strange rumor from my boss. He said that my attitude towards you has been poor. What do you think about that? If there are areas I need to improve, could you please let me know specifically what I'm doing wrong? I'll put in the effort to change. If this continues, it might hinder both of our work. If you don't like being mentored by me, I can arrange for a different mentor, but... I said. King maintained her unfriendly demeanor, scrutinizing me as if assessing my worth. I couldn't help but tense up under her uncomfortable gaze. Well then, if that's the case, would it be alright if I had someone else mentor me? How should I put this? I was disappointed with you, Miss Ingram. I mean, you only graduated from high school, right? I was hoping we might get along well, but to think you had such a low level of education. She remarked. What? I blurted out, taken aback. You know, don't you? I graduated from a renowned university abroad and am bilingual. To think that someone like me is being mentored by a person with such a low educational background like you. Maybe I should be the one mentoring you instead? King said with a malicious grin, laughing. Seeing her attitude, I clearly understood that she was looking down on me. However, I didn't feel irritated. Rather, I was a bit shocked to realize that although I had thought she was intelligent, she turned out to be a narrow-minded person. Observing my reaction, King had a triumphant look on her face. "Oh, and don't even think about trying to compete with me out of frustration. You and I wouldn't even have a proper match. And just between us, there's talk of me being transferred to the head office. I'll be saying goodbye to this small subsidiary company soon, so there's no point in changing mentors now. So from now on, don't interfere with what I do, okay?" she warned. "That won't work. There are still things I haven't taught you yet, and there aren't many tasks that can be entrusted to you alone, right? Especially if you're going to the head office." I protested. "Huh? What are you saying? Don't underestimate me even though you're just a high school graduate. Don't you think that's rude? Besides, unlike you, I'm highly capable, so I can produce better results than you even on my own," she retorted. King laughed maliciously, then waved her hand and left the conference room. I watched her back and let out a deep sigh. Even after that, the rumors didn't disappear. Moreover, after it was decided that King would be transferred to the head office, her attitude towards the other employees, not just me, became arrogant. Even when King was reprimanded, she absolutely refused to acknowledge her mistakes and never apologized. Furthermore, she boasted about her educational background, looked down on those around her, and took the liberty of advancing her work on her own. Even when I advised her to follow the established methods and manuals, she insisted that her way was more efficient and refused to comply. As a result, the tension within the department had risen to the point of making it uncomfortable. The day finally arrived when King was to be transferred to the head office. After King finished her farewell speech, gathered her belongings, and left, I could tell that the employees in the department were relieved. And then, a few days later, the calm and pleasant atmosphere from before returned to the department. I, too, was truly delighted by that change. 3 years passed since then. At my boss's recommendation, I was transferred to the head office. I had already been commuting to the head office several times and was being taught various tasks. Every day, I rushed from one department to another, gradually taking care of the tasks I was asked to do. Although King also worked at the same head office, since I was always running around, we only saw each other during meetings. The first time I participated in a meeting and briefly introduced myself to everyone, King's face contorted dramatically. As soon as the meeting ended, she approached me with a sour expression. "Transferring to the head office despite being a high school graduate. You must have worked hard to butter up your boss. By the way, were you able to properly understand the contents of the meeting just now, considering you're a high school graduate? Before you start crying because you don't understand, I recommend you quickly quit the company," King said with a nasty laugh. I curtly replied, "I'll be fine," and immediately left the spot. In the first place, it wasn't a matter of understanding or not. I was the one who prepared the materials for this meeting. However, I didn't want to bother prolonging the conversation by saying such things. My true feelings were that I wanted to avoid getting involved with her as much as possible and focus on completing the tasks assigned to me. Whether she knew about my true intentions or not, King made snide remarks every time she saw me. She was the director of the most prestigious department in the company, where highly skilled individuals gathered. Almost everyone at the head office aspired to be in that department, and every year, many employees submitted transfer requests to join. However, since King became the director, the reputation of that department had become incredibly poor. Apparently, King would yell at and berate subordinates who made mistakes more than necessary. Every day, angry shouts echoed throughout the department, and the atmosphere during work was said to be the worst. Hearing that, I was appalled. King seemed to be exactly the same as when she was at the subsidiary company. If anything, she seemed to have gotten worse. I had even encountered that situation once myself. It happened when I had some business to attend to at King's department. How can you not even do this? Is your brain just for decoration? Submitting a document like this is disrespectful to our client. King shouted, ranting and raving in the department. Fear and tension permeated the department, and the employees averted their eyes from King and the female employee she was scolding. Furthermore, King wasn't satisfied with just yelling. She started forcing the female employee to apologize profusely. Feeling that I couldn't stay silent any longer, I immediately called out to King. I don't know what happened, but please calm down. Can't you see she's crying? King looked at me, snorted, and insisted that this was her way of doing things. Nevertheless, I persisted, saying that it wasn't good to yell because the other employees were also frightened. Finally, King calmed down and dismissively said, "Fine," allowing the female employee to leave. Seeing her like that, I sensed a crisis. If things continued this way, the department would fall apart. And so, I immediately took action. Starting today, I have been assigned to this department. My name is Ingram. I may have some shortcomings, but I look forward to working with you all. I said, nodded deeply as I greeted the employees in King's department. The employees exchanged glances, perplexed by my sudden transfer. In the midst of this, King looked at me and exclaimed, "Oh, that's right. I forgot to tell everyone that Miss Ingram was coming." Well, I guess there's no need for that anyway, King said with a malicious grin, eyeing me from head to toe. I've never had a subordinate with such low education like you before. King immediately brought up my educational background. Hearing this, the other employees looked at me with sympathetic eyes. They probably thought that instead of the employee who was forced to apologize profusely earlier, I would now be the target of King's harassment. I could hear whispers here and there, saying things like, "I wonder how many days she'll last. I wonder how many days she'll last." I surveyed my surroundings, then turned my gaze back to King and stated clearly, "Since when did I become your subordinate?" "What?" King looked at me with surprised eyes. I told her. "I didn't mention it, did I? I'm actually the executive vice president of this company. I heard rumors about the problems in this department and thought that things couldn't continue like this, so I came to investigate the cause. Well, I think I understand now. I've also recorded your earlier remarks." As I said that and pulled out a voice recorder, King stared at me with a stunned expression. What's the meaning of this?" King shouted, her voice cracking. "It means exactly what I said," I retorted. Then, I informed King that she was being demoted. I told her that she would be removed from her current position as director and would be required to visit the subsidiary companies again to undergo management training. King's face grew even paler. "Why, you're going to demote me based on just those words? That's an abuse of authority. I can't believe you're the executive vice president in the first place. What is the company thinking?" King objected. But I pulled out another voice recorder and said, "This isn't the only evidence." I played back King's abusive language at a volume loud enough for everyone around to hear. This was the evidence I had been gradually gathering since the day I advised the CEO that there were issues in this department. I submitted these voice recordings to the CEO to inform him about the true state of this department. After listening to the voice recordings, the CEO made a grim face and gave me permission to demote King. When I explained this, King still refused to give up and lashed out at me. "There's no way the CEO would have given permission for that. I mean, I'm a bilingual graduate from an elite university, and I've achieved so much for this company. If I'm removed from this department and you end up leading it, it will quickly become the worst performing department. After all, you're just a high school graduate from a single-parent family, right? I can't imagine someone like you being more competent than me. King ranted in rapid speech, her shoulders trembling with anger as she confronted me. I calmly stated, "It's an official order, so you can't refuse." In response, King yelled at me the same way she would scold her subordinates and demanded that I apologize profusely right away. To make her understand her situation, I had prepared a secret plan. I anticipated that you would yell at me like that. That's why I've also arranged for witnesses. I said. What? Do you think I could have gathered so much evidence of your behavior all by myself? As I said that, I glanced at a few employees within the department. The employees who caught my gaze gathered around King and me. Among them was the female employee who had been forced by King to apologize deeply. King looked at the subordinates who had gathered with a surprised expression. The number of people was roughly half of the department. They were all individuals who had been unjustly suspected by King, had their achievements stolen, and had been mentally cornered. What is this? Are you all ganging up on me to trap me? King exclaimed. No, that's not it. They talked to me and cooperated with what I'm doing. I explained. This is betrayal. You're all my subordinates, aren't you? Instead of supporting your superior, you're cooperating with this poor person with low education? Are you out of your minds? It's not too late, even now. If you side with me, I might even give you preferential treatment, you know? King shouted, spitting as she looked around at her subordinates. However, not a single person listened to King's words. They simply directed cold stares at her as she continued to hurl insults. Perhaps hearing the commotion, a certain individual showed up at the department. It was the company's CEO, Isaac. The sudden appearance of a big shot caused a stir within the department. Seeing Isaac's face, King's face turned pale, and she swallowed hard. I could hear the shouting all the way from the hallway. Is there a problem? Isaac asked, looking at me. I briefly explained the current situation and told him that when I informed King about her demotion, she strongly objected. Isaac made a grim face and looked at King. Seeing Isaac's expression, she came to her senses and hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Miss Ingram is trying to discredit me. She must be jealous of my high education. My subordinates have been deceived too. Mr. Isaac, you might have been told something as well, but please don't be fooled. You can't trust someone like her. I think it's Miss Ingram who should be demoted. King pleaded with Isaac, then glared at me with sharp eyes. Her face had a look of confidence in her victory. Indeed, I knew that a strong bond of trust had been built between King and Isaac. After all, it was Isaac who had recruited King. Originally, King had been working at a different company. She had a reputation among the upper management as an exceptionally talented employee, and she often attended parties alongside executives and the CEO. That's when she also met Isaac. Seeing her numerous achievements and her attentiveness to those around her, Isaac was convinced that she would deliver outstanding results at his company as well. He offered her a higher salary than the company she was currently working for and successfully recruited King. Mr. Isaac, you trust me more, right? King puffed out her chest, regaining her confident stance. Isaac only frowned at her. Perhaps sensing the unfavorable atmosphere, King further emphasized her accomplishments in this department and how capable she was. However, Isaac shook his head at her. I want to trust both of you. But after hearing Miss Ingram's report, I must admit I'm disappointed. You have changed. I don't know why it turned out this way, but your transformation is not a good one. That's why I want you to learn anew at this company. Why do you trust Miss Ingram to such an extent? To begin with, she's just a high school graduate from a single-parent household, you know? King exclaimed. At King's words, Isaac made a grim face. After groaning in thought for a while, he said as if giving up. That's my responsibility. I've kept quiet about it, but Miss Ingram is my daughter. King was stunned. She slowly looked back and forth between Isaac and me. The employees around us also held their breath and stared at us. It was only natural since I had kept quiet about it too. Isaac then explained that his wife had become fed up and demanded a divorce because he had neglected his family, selfishly started a company, and acted as if he owned the place. As a result, he had made me feel lonely. In no way. The CEO's daughter? But she's a high school graduate, you know? This is special treatment. I can't believe Mr. Isaac was that kind of person. King looked at the CEO and me with a resentful expression on her surprised face. I sighed at her attitude. About that, I'm no longer just a high school graduate. Originally, I didn't go to college because I didn't have anything I wanted to do, but now I've found many things I want to learn. So, just the other day, I graduated from a state university. It's a well-known school that even King is familiar with. I studied business there. What? And just between us, the reason I studied business is that Mr. Isaac asked me to become the next CEO. The board members have also agreed to me becoming the next CEO. I said decisively and met King's gaze. King looked at me as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I handed her the documents regarding her demotion. She weakly accepted them and collapsed to the floor. I hope this will be an opportunity for a change in your attitude. You are indeed talented, and I believe you have the potential to become an irreplaceable asset to my father's and my company. As I finished saying that, King covered her mouth, her eyes wide open, and remained frozen for a while. Afterward, King left the head office. There were rumors that she would quit the company since she had been demoted and had her salary reduced, but it seemed she chose to stay with the company for the time being. However, since the news had already reached the subsidiary she was transferred to, she wasn't entrusted with any important work and spent her days doing simple clerical tasks and miscellaneous chores. So far, I haven't heard of any major issues, but if she causes problems again, she won't get away with just a demotion, so she seems to be keeping a low profile. There's a backstory as to why she chose to stay with the company. Once, King visited the company she used to work for and tried to negotiate with them to hire her back at her previous salary. However, the CEO there was aware of her recent behavior and turned her down, telling her to reflect properly on her actions. It's a harsh reality for her, but she has no choice but to accept that it's the result of her own actions. Moreover, people from other large companies connected to the CEO of my company and the CEO of the company she used to work for had also heard rumors about her behavior, so it seems no one wanted to hire her. No matter how talented someone is, if their conduct is poor, they'll be turned away as too much to handle. Yet, perhaps due to her pride, the companies she approached were all relatively large corporations, so she probably didn't want to work for a company with a lower income than her previous salary. King needs to learn that in order to maximize her abilities and perform her job well, she must let go of that pride. Then one day, as I was returning from a business dinner, I happened to run into King at the company. It seemed she had some business at the head office. The employees around us remembered her and were openly avoiding her. When King saw me, her eyes widened, and she immediately straightened her posture and greeted. Her expression was somewhat frustrated, and it was clear that she still hadn't sorted out her feelings. While she was doing that, I continued to achieve steady results. It seems that since I became the CEO, the company's sales have further increased. My company has now become a global corporation that can compete on the world stage. My parents fully support me in my endeavors, and I'm determined to work even harder to live up to their expectations.
What did you just say?
I couldn't help but be shocked. A luxurious restaurant in a high-end hotel. The table was adorned with sumptuous dishes, symbolizing the importance of this special day. Sitting across from me was Brandon, the father of my daughter's fiancé, with a malicious grin on his face.
Sarah grew up in a single-mother household, and she didn't even go to college, right? She must have had a tough time. Like maybe delivering newspapers early in the morning to pay for her tuition.
Or perhaps the nightlife industry? At first, his words seemed to express concern about Sarah's single-mother upbringing. However, they quickly turned into something mocking. I wanted to believe I had misheard. Today was a family meeting with my daughter, Sarah's fiancé, Nicholas, and his parents. It was an important occasion where we were supposed to become one family, yet the words spoken were incredibly insulting. Being directly or indirectly mocked for being a single mother was something I had sadly grown accustomed to. But this time, the setting made it even more intolerable.
Is that so? You must have had a hard time.
Miranda, Brandon's wife, sitting next to him, said something unbelievably condescending, as if she truly pitied me from the bottom of her heart. What is wrong with these people? Their behavior was beyond rude. Sarah had told me a bit about Nicholas's parents beforehand. Brandon, a well-known lawyer, famous not only for his skills, but also for the many bad rumors surrounding him. And his wife Miranda, a daughter from an upper-class family who married the son of a lawyer. I had heard she was kind, but judging by her current behavior, she seemed extremely naive.
Dad. Mom, how can you say that to Sarah and Jessica? It's disrespectful.
Nicholas, sitting next to Sarah, tried to soften the situation. He finally got over the shock of Brandon's abusive remarks and turned red with anger. Sarah had told me that Nicholas was gentle and rarely raised his voice. As Sarah said, he seemed like a kind person, and I found myself nodding calmly despite the unexpected turn of events.
What's disrespectful?
Miranda, seemingly not understanding Brandon's sarcasm, looked puzzled. Brandon, on the other hand, had a mocking attitude, as if to say, "You inexperienced fool."
What's wrong with speaking the truth? I've seen many people from single-mother and single-father households. Many of them ended up committing crimes and came crying to their families. What?
My vision gradually turned red. Being mocked for being a single mother was one thing. But to insinuate that we had lived our lives doing something shameful or criminal was something I could not tolerate. And apparently, Sarah felt the same way.
Sure, I didn't go to college, but now I work at the same law firm as Nicholas, and I'm an international lawyer. Haven't you heard that from Nicholas? What?
Now it was Brandon's turn to be at a loss for words. I felt a bad sense of satisfaction. But
someone like you couldn't possibly become an international lawyer. Don't lie. Have some shame, shame on you.
Brandon, his face turning as red as it could get, berated Sarah. The atmosphere was no longer suitable for a family meeting, charged with anger. Sarah tried to respond forcefully, but Brandon spoke first.
How did you get that qualification anyway? Probably by offering sexual favors for business deals, right? Single mothers like you and your kind are all the same. Even your dead father, I bet he didn't die in a dignified way either.
I heard a sound, like something thick breaking inside me. It wasn't just my imagination. Otherwise, Why would my vision be so red and wavering like water?
What do you know? Mom?
Sarah's worried voice broke through, noticing my change. She was regaining her composure. But it was too late to stop.
What do you even understand? My husband died helping others, standing up for his sense of justice. You know nothing about him, about us who loved him and his sense of right.
I am Jessica. I met my husband, Rodney, back when I was still a student. At that time, I was confident in my language skills and, being young, I traveled abroad alone. It was during a long summer break. I didn't join any tour groups, just wandered around tourist spots with a guidebook in hand. I knew there were dangerous areas, so I took all possible precautions against theft and pickpocketing. But I am a young person venturing out of a safe area for the first time. I was quickly targeted by a shady local man.
Hey there, beautiful. First time here? I know some beautiful spots not in the guidebook. Let me show you around. No, thank you. Please leave me alone.
Looking back, my foreign language skills were terrible. Suddenly, the man's speech sped up and became hard to understand. Even though it was just my unfamiliarity, it was probably normal speed for him. I responded awkwardly, with incorrect grammar. That likely made him think I was an easy target. Despite feeling chills, I tried to keep smiling, but he suddenly grabbed my arm.
No, let go! It's fine, there's a hotel nearby if you're tired.
What is he saying? I thought frantically, struggling to shake off his hand. But the difference in physical strength between men and women was evident. Moreover, he was quite well built. It wasn't easy to break free. I looked around for help, but even in a foreign land, it was the same. People passed by either ignoring us or seeing it as a minor squabble, offering no assistance. I felt helpless. I thought of my parents, who had been worried about my trip until the last moment. I felt sorry for them. I might never see them again. Just as I was about to give up.
Hey! There you are! Over here!
A male voice I didn't recognize. From his accent, he didn't sound like a local. Both I and the man holding my arm looked puzzled. Unfazed by the tense atmosphere, the man, likely from my own country, approached us with a smile.
Who the hell are you? Thank goodness I found you. She's my friend. I lost sight of her for a moment and got worried. Who are you?
Out of the frying pan into the fire. Speaking softly in my native language, I asked the stranger. Then the man also whispered. Trust me. He whispered back. Then he turned back to the other man, smiling, and gestured for him to release my hand.
I did try to warn her at first, but she has this troublesome habit of getting so engrossed in unusual things that she forgets her surroundings. It seems she couldn't control herself. You really helped us. Especially in a foreign land, where there's even rumors about people pretending to flirt only to engage in human trafficking.
The man's face tightened as if he realized this might be true. He then released my hand and hurried away, almost fleeing. Did I get saved?
Yes, it seems so.
As the man's figure disappeared, the previously smiling and composed man suddenly collapsed to the ground, drained of energy.
Hey, are you okay?
I had suspected him of being a shady character, but this sudden collapse made me forget all those thoughts. Peering into his face, I realized he had been putting on a brave front. Sweat trickled down his smiling, yet pained face.
I'm not doing so well, but
I'm glad it worked out somehow. His face showed genuine relief from the bottom of his heart. Seeing his soft expression relaxed me a bit and reminded me of something important. Oh my. I didn't even thank you properly. I'm so sorry. And thank you. You saved me." When I hastily expressed my gratitude, the man seemed a bit taken aback. "It's really okay. Meeting people, even through small things, is fate. It's only natural to help someone in trouble." He stood up with a smile, lightly brushing the dirt off his pants. Helping someone in trouble is only natural. His calm words echoed in my mind. There are still people like this out there. People who help others in need without expecting anything in return. Just because they have a strong sense of justice. But really, be careful in this country. What I said earlier is not a lie. He was probably referring to the rumors about human trafficking disguised as flirting. Thinking back, I was indeed in a dangerous situation. If this man hadn't helped me. If that other man had taken more forceful measures. When I think about it, I and this man were truly lucky. Thinking about it made me tremble with fear. "Well, I'll be going now." His voice snapped me back to reality. I didn't know why. But maybe I was already drawn to his sense of justice at that moment.
"Wait, please!"
I found myself calling out to him as he was about to leave. The man turned back with a curious look. I called out without thinking, but had no idea what to say next. Desperately trying to think, I finally said, "Please let me thank you properly. I just realized I didn't even ask your name." It sounded like a cheesy pickup line. But the man, without suspicion, just gave a wry smile and told me his name. "My name isn't anything special, but it's Rodney. I'm just a solo traveler." This was how I met Rodney, who would later become my husband. After that incident in a foreign land, we exchanged contact information and, strangely enough, started dating soon after I returned home. Whenever our schedules allowed, we went on numerous dates. I soon realized that Rodney was a man of unyielding integrity and justice. During our dates, if he saw someone in need, even if it wasn't a person, he would rush to help regardless of our plans. For example, if he saw a lost child, he would stay with them until they were reunited with their parents, even if it took hours. Despite his fear of heights, he once climbed a tree to retrieve a baseball for some kids who had gotten it stuck. If he saw an injured stray cat, he would pick it up and rush it to the animal hospital without a second thought, not caring if he got blood on himself. He would take responsibility and care for it until he found it a new home. Honestly, sometimes, I felt a bit uneasy about his tendency to prioritize strangers over me. But that was just how he was, and it was one of the reasons I fell in love with him, so I chose to keep quiet. Time passed, we got married, and the following year, we had a child. Our daughter, Sarah, who had a gentle face just like him. Since Sarah was born, our daily life seemed to be filled with even more happiness. I had a loving husband, an adorable daughter. We weren't exactly wealthy, but we cherished our modest happiness, laughing together as a family. Those were days without any problems. However, those happy days came to an abrupt end. 5 years after Sarah was born, Rodney died at the young age of 31. It was a day I'll never forget. An unseasonal heavy rain was falling. Sarah and I stayed up, rubbing our sleepy eyes, waiting for Rodney, who was late coming home from work. The things Sarah and I talked about. I don't remember the details that much. I only remember the sound of the rain pounding down, and the sudden ringing of the phone informing me that Rodney had been taken to the hospital. With a sleepy Sarah, we finally made it to the hospital through the pouring rain, only to be greeted by Rodney, who was already cold. The doctor standing next to me calmly told me the cause of Rodney's death was drowning. In the midst of this heavy rain, he had jumped into the river to save a drowning boy, and only Rodney ended up losing his life. That was so typical of Rodney. I thought, as a strangely calm part of me noted. He saved someone, not thinking of himself, and ended up dying, a beloved and important hero.
Mommy, what's wrong?
Sarah, still looking sleepy, gazed up at me. I couldn't cry. I couldn't let myself cry in front of Sarah, who didn't understand what was happening. I desperately tried to hold back my tears. But,
Mommy, why is Daddy sleeping? Sarah, stop!
I instinctively stopped Sarah, who was trying to approach Rodney, and hugged her tightly. I didn't know why I did that myself. Mommy, it hurts, Sarah said from within my arms. But I didn't let go, holding her even tighter. As if to shield her from the reality of Rodney's death, I hugged her small body. Also, as if to shield myself from that same reality. That small, moving warmth. A sign of life. Unable to bear it, I silently let my tears flow. What followed were stormy days. I held Rodney's funeral, desperately, watching Sarah, who finally understood Rodney's death, sobbing. Someone claiming to represent the boy Rodney saved came to the funeral, but I don't remember much, being overwhelmed with arranging the funeral while feeling a deep sense of loss. Even after the funeral, peace did not return to us. With Rodney gone, we became a single-mother household. Fortunately, with the savings Rodney left us, the job I had before Sarah was born, and the support from many people who admired Rodney, we managed to get by. However, relying on that alone would eventually lead to running out of resources. Therefore, I decided to start working again once things had settled down a bit. I worked day and night, without regard to the time. As a result, I felt guilty, knowing that Sarah was likely feeling lonely. Yet, I couldn't afford to stop. Of course, there was the financial aspect, but more importantly, it was because of a promise I had made to Rodney one day.
Sarah should see the world. It might be difficult to do it the way I did, but I want her to see the world, to understand it. And one day, I hope she becomes a kind person who can help those in need.
These were Rodney's words, often repeated like a mantra during his lifetime. I wanted Sarah to see the world. I wanted her to experience many things. I didn't want her to give up on those experiences because of money. That was my only driving force. Sarah never complained to my face about it. Maybe she was being considerate in her own way. Her grades were always top-notch, so she wouldn't have to go to cram school. Teachers constantly suggested prestigious private schools, but she stubbornly chose public schools. She went through public middle and high schools, and then came the time to think about her next steps.
Mom, I have a favor to ask.
Sarah said this abruptly. Ever since Rodney passed away, Sarah had never made such a selfish request, possibly out of consideration. Her wish was to travel the world instead of going to college. She wanted to see the world and experience things that school and books couldn't teach, things that could only be understood on the ground. Even knowing her true feelings, I couldn't help but wonder why. As a parent, I wanted her to go to college without worrying about finances and to live a happy life. While I had those thoughts, I also questioned if going to college and living in a narrow world would truly make her happy. Was it right for a parent to crush the first selfish wish of a child who had endured so much until now? Could I, with my own ego, destroy the wishes and promises that Rodney had always spoken of during his life? The answer was, of course, no.
All right, go ahead.
Fortunately, I had saved enough money over the years to cover the travel expenses without needing to splurge. When I told her this, Sarah cried with joy and repeatedly promised to work and pay it back. But I refused, saying that after all the patience she had shown, she should allow me to do this much. And so, after graduating from high school, Sarah set off on her journey around the world. By coincidence, it seemed as if she mirrored Rodney's image from that day, something I hadn't shared with her. Every day, without fail, I received a message from Sarah, not only to let me know she was safe but also to share her experiences. There might have been issues with international signals, but it was likely she was also being mindful of communication costs. She had grown into such a considerate child. The messages varied slightly each day, usually consisting of text and photos from her travels. Sometimes, she expressed amazement at the crowds and high prices in major cities abroad, along with photos of skyscrapers she had never seen before. Other times, she shared how people helped her when she was struggling in a foreign country, along with heartwarming photos of her with those who had helped her. There were also times when she entered developing countries, where she was deeply moved by the locals' determination to live their lives despite their circumstances. She felt ashamed of herself for having given up on various things because of being from a single-parent household. With such messages, she sent beautiful photos of sunsets she had seen with the local people. One day, amidst the joyful yet humbling exchanges of messages, there was a note saying, "I'm coming back soon." It read, "Mom, I want to become an international lawyer. When I return, I will study law, go abroad, and get qualified as an international lawyer. I want to help people from many different countries." Sarah didn't know much about Rodney's sense of justice and desire to help others. It was one of the traits that attracted me to him and made me love him deeply. I never realized that Sarah had inherited this beautiful quality from him.
She truly grew up to be a kind person, just like you wished.
I reported Sarah's growth to Rodney's photo while showing him the message. In the photo, he seemed to have a bittersweet smile. And then, time passed again. When Sarah returned, she worked at a law firm while saving for exam fees and studying for her lawyer qualification. I offered to cover the exam fees, but she refused and insisted on achieving it on her own. Is this what it means for a child to become independent? While feeling proud of Sarah's growth, I also felt a tinge of loneliness. Although she declined financial support, I helped her in other ways, particularly in her daily life. I made her late-night snacks when she worked late and packed sandwiches for her lunch to save on food expenses. "You don't have to go through all this trouble," she said with a wry smile, but she accepted my help nonetheless. Years passed since the journey that changed Sarah, and she finally qualified as a lawyer and worked at a law firm. There, she gained more knowledge and experience, and eventually, with her boss's permission, went abroad. In a foreign land, she achieved her dream of becoming an international lawyer. She sent me this news when she turned 27. Since then, a lot has happened. Just like the day she told me she wanted to become an international lawyer. Along with the notification of her qualification, there was a photo of Sarah smiling. I showed the message to Rodney's photo.
Sarah has grown into a kind person, just like you. She will help many people through law. There will be tough times and challenges. So please, watch over her from your side.
I thought of Rodney and made my wish. I had no idea then that a year later, Sarah would meet her future spouse at work and decide to get married. And that I would face such an insulting situation at that family meeting. I quickly recounted my memories and promises with my late husband, and proudly told them about our daughter who inherited his sense of justice and became an international lawyer. Suddenly, the room fell silent. Even the unpleasant parents of her partner, Nicholas, and Sarah herself froze in shock. I had done it. But, although I felt sorry for Sarah, I had no regrets. Rodney had helped a stranger boy selflessly and lost his life. My beloved, proud Rodney. I won't tolerate anyone mocking his life and the reason for his death, even if they are the parents of my daughter's spouse. Brandon's face turned red with anger. Next to him, Miranda paled and looked back and forth between Brandon and me. I braced myself for the worst words imaginable. It was at that moment when I resolved myself. It was Nicholas who broke the silence first, quite unexpectedly. With an expression of disbelief, Nicholas began to speak.
That person, could it be?
I was the next one to be surprised by what Nicholas said. He was completely right. Nicholas accurately captured Rodney's character from back then, and even knew the name of the hospital where Rodney had been taken.
Nicholas, how do you? So it was true.
Nicholas interpreted my words as confirmation, and his gentle expression contorted. It was a mixture of joy and regret, a kind of bittersweet smile. Then, suddenly, he apologized deeply. It was more than just an apology.
Nicholas? Nicholas! What are you doing?
Brandon, enraged, tried to make Nicholas stand up, but Nicholas brushed his arm away and apologized even more deeply.
Jessica and Sarah. Even though I didn't realize it, my parents were incredibly rude. Nicholas, you don't have to go that far. That's right. We understand your feelings, Nicholas.
Even though we urged him, Nicholas stubbornly refused like a child. No, my parents did something that terrible. Sarah. It might be hard to believe, and even I still can't believe it, but the boy your father saved was me when I was young. It was now our turn to be surprised by his words. This was Nicholas's story. At the time, he was severely bullied at school because of Brandon's bad reputation. On that day, he encountered bullies on his way back from tutoring, and they threw his important tutoring bag into the river. Trying not to worry his parents, he attempted to retrieve the bag by himself. However, young Nicholas slipped and fell into the river. The river, swollen with rain, had a swift current, making it impossible for him to return to the shore on his own. In that situation, Rodney dived into the river to save him, without any regard for his own safety. Rodney first brought Nicholas to the shore, then jumped back into the river to retrieve the bag that had been swept away. Just because Nicholas was in trouble. And as a result, Rodney died. Nicholas knew the name of the hospital where Rodney was taken because his worried housekeeper, who came to pick him up, had called it in. Nicholas was also taken to the same hospital by the paramedics as a precaution. Later, young Nicholas, upon hearing from the nurses that his savior had died, tried to apologize to our family immediately. However, he was prevented by Brandon, who was a renowned lawyer at the time. If it became known that the son of a famous lawyer was bullied and caused someone's death, it would damage his reputation. For such conservative reasons, he left the apology to his representative. Nicholas deeply regretted it. If he hadn't jumped into the river, if he had been more responsible, if he had been a person of justice. Since that day, Nicholas swore to become a lawyer who could help others as much as possible, just like Brandon, but never like Brandon, who was drowned in power. A different kind of silence enveloped the room. Nicholas, filled with rage, remained utterly silent, as if he had become a completely different person. Then, in the next moment, he did something unexpected. He offered a deep apology. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were Nicholas' benefactor. I spoke out of turn." Neither Sarah nor I could say anything. I couldn't fully grasp Sarah's feelings. She simply stared quietly at the family she could consider her father's enemy. As for me, I was on the verge of exploding with anger. I thought, why apologize now? If he was going to apologize, why didn't he come to apologize the moment Rodney passed away? I was convinced that this apology wasn't sincere. However, it was Sarah who spoke first. "Both of you, please stop." Her voice was surprisingly calm and gentle. It wasn't just me who was taken aback by this. Both of them also wore expressions of shock. Sarah continued.
Indeed, it's hard not to feel that apologizing now is too late. Brandon, as a fellow lawyer and as a person, I find it difficult to forgive you for not coming to apologize immediately.
Brandon's face flushed red again. But, perhaps realizing he stood no chance, he only let out a small groan. Sarah continued to address him.
I'm sure my father would say this. He'd say he was just glad that the boy from that time is safe. That's all that matters.
Then, crouching in front of Nicholas, who was still kneeling, Sarah spoke with a tearful, bittersweet smile.
My father saved you, and you've carried on his sense of justice. I know this because I've watched you in the office all these years. So, Nicholas, who has carried on my father's will, please marry me.
Are you sure?
Yes, that is an unchangeable fact. But it's also true that you've inherited my father's sense of justice.
Tears streamed down Nicholas' cheeks. Then, grasping Sarah's hands tightly, he said in a voice full of emotion.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll make sure to make you happy.
As Nicholas finally broke down in tears, Sarah gently embraced him. Seeing such a tender moment between the two of them, the anger and resentment within me began to melt away gently. When I looked over at Brandon, he had an awkward expression and was looking away. Perhaps, in his own way, this was his way of acknowledging Sarah and Nicholas's marriage. Was it all right to feel relieved about this? I'm sure Rodney would have said it was. Thinking this, I sent my silent blessings to Nicholas, who was sobbing, and Sarah, who was gently comforting him. At the end of such an eventful day, with the world bathed in the colors of sunset, Sarah, Nicholas, and I found ourselves at a certain place. Rodney's resting place, the cemetery.
I am deeply sorry that I couldn't come to thank you back then because I went against my father's wishes. Although it's late, it's thanks to you that I am here now.
Thank you very much. He said his gratitude. Sarah also spoke to the grave.
Dad, I still feel lonely without you, but thank you for saving Nicholas that day.
Then she laid the bouquet of flowers she had been holding. Today, since it was mainly about Sarah and Nicholas's report, I stood quietly in the background.
Although it might be too much to say I'll do as much as you did, I promise here and now to help those in need and to protect Sarah from now on. So Dad, please watch over us from the sky. I will also do my best to help as many people in need as you and Nicholas.
The two of them made their vows in front of Rodney's grave. My daughter, who had grown strong over time, and the young man who had inherited Rodney's sense of justice. Rodney, are you seeing this? The things you did were never in vain. Even though you are gone, your will lives on and is being carried forward. Feeling the joy in my heart, I shed tears for the first time since that funeral day. When my eldest daughter, Jewel, turned 12 and her entrance exams for junior high were approaching, my husband Howard suddenly demanded a divorce. My parents' educational policies have led me to this decision. Jewel is a genius, undoubtedly smarter than her peers. We'll raise her. She needs to earn a lot and take care of us in the future. She's our golden goose.
Yes, you should leave with our second daughter, Diana. Besides, Howard has a girlfriend, Alyssa, who is an exceptional returnee working at the same company. You're no longer needed.
Suddenly being asked for a divorce and then learning about his affair left me stunned.
What do you mean? Explain properly.
Then, without me realizing, Diana was standing there, expressionless, listening.
I see. To you, I'm worthless because I'm just ordinary.
Howard, caught off guard, looked disturbed.
Mom, I'll be fine. Let's leave quickly so we don't interfere with Jewel.
I took Diana and left, making a call to someone. Years later, when we met again, our positions had reversed, and Howard was in a pitiful state. My name is Sabrina. Before getting married, I worked at a company, but now I'm a housewife with 2 daughters. I dreamed of a love marriage and hoped to marry my then boyfriend someday, but my parents were strongly opposed. They forced me to break up with my boyfriend, who was just an ordinary office worker. Later, at my parents' strong urging, I was introduced to Howard, an elite working at a foreign company, and our marriage was quickly arranged. Howard attended prestigious private schools from elementary to university and was a true elite. He was also quite good-looking and never had trouble with women. Inside, I was filled with resentment towards my parents who ignored my feelings and made decisions for me. However, it was clear that arguing would ultimately force me to follow their wishes. So I reluctantly started my life with Howard. I enjoyed my job at the publishing company and planned to continue working, but my parents and Howard didn't allow it, so I had no choice but to resign. A year after our marriage, Jewel was born, followed by Diana the next year. Howard was very busy with work, so I didn't expect him to participate in childcare, but he surprised me by taking time off and cutting work short to be involved with the kids. Since my company is foreign, there are many foreigners. They all value their families, and I want to be like that too. I was moved, thinking that elites take care of their families too, and for the first time, I was grateful to my parents and Howard and satisfied with this life. Several years passed, and when Jewel was about to enter preschool, Howard approached me with a suggestion. I want to talk about Jewel. She's about to start preschool, right? Early education is common these days, so I thought about enrolling her in a school for young children. A preschool? I'm not very familiar with it, but it's a place where small children are taught, right? I vaguely remembered my mother-in-law Kelly and father-in-law Stephen talking about it when Jewel was just born. They proudly told me that thanks to the school, they got into a famous private school and even ordered pamphlets for me, but I had forgotten due to being busy with my first-time childcare. That's right. Besides, my parents are eager to fund her education as much as necessary. What do you think? If Jewel enjoys it, then I agree. But I'm not as knowledgeable as you, so please come along for the visits. Got it. I'll adjust my schedule so we can go as soon as possible. True to his word, the following week, we took Jewel to visit a preschool. She was able to interact with kids her age and seemed to enjoy it so much that we enrolled her that day. She started attending a few times a week. As expected of Howard's child, Jewel had a natural aptitude and quickly mastered basic first-grade math and understood Spanish, showing clear developmental advantages over her peers. Jewel, pleased with the praise, began studying eagerly at home. Seeing this, Howard, Kelly, and Stephen became even more enthusiastic about her education, suggesting she try other extracurricular activities in addition to preschool. On the other hand, though we tried enrolling Diana in the same preschool, she showed no interest in studying, preferring to draw and play with dolls. She ended up quitting within a month. Naturally, Howard's parents didn't let this go unnoticed and constantly compared Jewel and Diana, favoring the more accomplished Jewel. Diana, aware of her situation even at a young age, began to avoid Kelly and Stephen, and their relationship deteriorated as she grew older. When Jewel turned 12 and her junior high entrance exams were imminent, Howard suddenly demanded a divorce.
A divorce out of the blue? What do you mean? Explain properly. My parents' educational policies led us to this decision. You know how it goes, children's academic abilities depend on their parents. Even if Jewel could get into the most prestigious school, if you and Diana are around, she'll end up failing if she stays in this environment. This environment! I make sure she eats balanced meals and drive her to and from cram school every night. What exactly is bad for Jewel?
I couldn't think of anything. I had always prioritized my children's well-being in my parenting. Suddenly, Kelly and Stephen appeared behind Howard. Enough. Sabrina, you will take care of the ordinary Diana, and we'll take the genius Jewel.
Yes, take Diana and leave. Besides, Howard has a brilliant girlfriend named Alyssa, a returnee working at the same company. You're no longer needed. Howard and Alyssa will raise Jewel.
I was shocked to hear about Howard's affair so suddenly.
Wait, a girlfriend and a divorce. You can't just drop this all at once.
That's the situation. I'm divorcing you and marrying Alyssa. She knows about Jewel and agreed to raise her together. In other words, they wanted to say they'd educate the brilliant Jewel and leave the ordinary Diana to me.
You love Diana more than Jewel, don't you? Jewel needs an environment where she can focus entirely on her studies. My parents are worried she'll fall behind because of you.
To them, a child who excels academically is the only real child.
Are you seriously saying this? I love both of them equally. Is Jewel the only one who matters to you because she meets your expectations? Both of them are our precious daughters. Jewel is undoubtedly a genius, far smarter than her peers. I just want to ensure her future isn't ruined. That's why I think it's best for me to take her and raise her with my parents' support. She needs to earn a lot and take care of me in the future. She's our golden goose. Are you saying I should leave with Diana so as not to hinder Jewel?
Hearing my words, Howard nodded quietly. Diana, who had been listening without expression, was standing there.
I see. To you, I'm worthless because I'm just ordinary, right?
Diana.
I'm not saying that exactly, but you're not entirely wrong either.
Howard's cruel words toward his own daughter confirmed the harsh reality for Diana, who sighed deeply.
Mom, I'll be fine. Let's leave so we don't get in Jewel's way.
Diana. I regretted making my daughter say such things and silently apologized to her repeatedly. At the same time, I realized staying here for even a second longer was not good for Diana. I quickly completed the procedures and left the house holding Diana's hand.
Diana, don't worry. No matter what, Mom is always on your side.
Diana smiled, nodded, and squeezed my hand tightly. That night, I called a friend.
Hello, it's Sabrina. Yes, I've decided to take on that matter.
Time passed, and it was now winter, 8 years later. It was colder than usual this year, and the forecast predicted snow next week. I got out of my car, thinking about the weather. It was especially cold today, and my hands felt like they were freezing. I hurried from the parking lot to my apartment building to escape the cold. As I entered the lobby on the first floor and took out my keys, I noticed a homeless-looking man who didn't seem to belong there. I initially thought he was a homeless person seeking refuge from the cold, but when he saw me, he called my name. Sabrina. Which startled me. I didn't know such a homeless-looking man. I tried to ignore him and walk away, but his voice calling my name again made me realize who he was, and I slowly turned to confirm.
That voice, could it be Howard?
I'm glad you remember me. It's amazing. You live in such a secure high-rise apartment. I couldn't get inside and had to wait here for you. Behind Howard, who awkwardly laughed, stood a tall, muscular security guard glaring at him, determined not to let any suspicious person escape. Yes, I do.
So, what brings you here after finding my address?
It's a long story, but please, let me inside. I've been waiting for hours in this cold, and I can barely feel my hands and feet. Without explaining his purpose, Howard started to plead, saying he was at his limit. Come on in then. I reluctantly let Howard into my apartment. Thank you so much. If you hadn't come home, I don't know what would have happened.
What would have happened? You would have just gone back home, right?
Stop exaggerating.
So, what's your business?
Keep it brief.
I have work early in the morning, and Diana will be back soon, so I want this to be over before then.
I didn't want to spend even a second more with Howard in my home. Nor did I want him to meet Diana. Despite my cold words, Howard smiled, happy to be let in. He finally sat down and began to speak. The company I was working for, well, I got fired, Howard said.
What? The big company you were working at even before we divorced?
So, he's jobless now and in such a state. I came to my own conclusion. Things were going well until a few years ago. But then my boss's demands kept getting tougher. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I see. I failed at this really important deal this quarter, which cost the company a lot, so they fired me. Hearing why he was fired didn't surprise me much, and I responded nonchalantly. Despite his excuses, the bottom line was his lack of ability. Although it was a bit surprising that someone praised as an elite would get fired, it didn't matter to me anymore. What kind of work are you doing now, Sabrina? Living in such a nice high-rise, you must be making quite a lot. Howard asked, trying to gauge my situation. Well, I'm working at a company run by a friend. I never had trouble with my salary, so I could raise Diana without any issues. I'm truly grateful to my friend. Right after the divorce, I started working at that company. In fact, my friend had highly valued my abilities and had been trying to recruit me even before the divorce. However, forced to be a housewife, I had to keep turning down the offer. When I contacted her after the divorce, she was incredibly happy and immediately took me on, allowing me to start working without the hassle of job hunting. Though it took some time to get back into the groove due to a long break, I quickly regained my stride and succeeded in producing good results. Several years later, my friend decided to retire to take care of her aging parents, and she strongly recommended that I take over as the new president. At that time, it was still a small company, but apparently, I had a knack for management and managed to grow the company until it eventually went public. You're a president now, we're worlds apart. Howard murmured. And what about you, Howard? Are you working at all? Well, sort of. I have to live, so I've been working at cleaning and construction companies. But you know, after working for a big company for so long, I just didn't fit in with the others. I often clashed with people over how to do things and ended up changing jobs many times. Listening to him, I could easily imagine the situation. Howard had always been excessively proud, probably belittling others and causing trouble with human relations, leading to his dismissals. Suddenly, Howard, who had been sitting, stood up and started pleading again. Sabrina, please. Hire me at your company. I'll start with any task, even the most menial. With my background, I think your company would take me in, please? Ha! I had anticipated this since I mentioned I was the president. But my answer was already decided. Sorry, but it's not possible. We have enough staff. Besides, you have your brilliant daughter, Jewel. She's an adult now, why don't you rely on her? And what about Alyssa, the girlfriend from your company? You married her, didn't you? As soon as he heard the names Jewel and Alyssa, Howard suddenly shouted angrily. Don't you dare mention their names! Startled by his sudden outburst, I realized I had clearly struck a nerve. Howard's face turned red as he continued to grumble. He started speaking, still looking disgruntled. We divorced before we knew the results of Jewel's junior high entrance exam, but she passed the super difficult school. That's great, Jewel's always been amazing. Howard shouted again. What's so great about that? Things were fine until she went from junior high to high school. But then she started skipping school. Instead of studying, she stopped coming home and started hanging out with bad friends. It wasn't unusual to get calls from the police. I see. My guess was that she probably got fed up with a life centered solely on studying. Jewel thrived on praise. Before the divorce, I would always commend her when she brought home good test scores, which I believe kept her motivated. However, it was clear that no one praised her after the divorce. Instead, when she came home from school, she faced constant pressure from Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa to study and become an elite. I'm surprised she managed to persevere through high school. And what about Alyssa? She only liked me because I was an elite. As soon as I got fired, she ditched me instead of helping. She even abandoned Jewel, saying she wasn't her own child. Well, she wasn't the type to stick around for an unprofitable man. Jewel hasn't come home in years, and I can't reach her. I have no idea what she's doing. My parents both passed away from illness a while back. I can't rely on Jewel or my parents anymore. Sabrina, you're the only one I can turn to. Please, hire me. I see. I'm sure Jewel is living her life well. While I felt sorry for Jewel, it was Howard who had insisted on taking care of her and pushing us away. In reality, I knew where Jewel was. No matter how much Howard begged, my answer wouldn't change. As I was contemplating how to get Howard out of the house, having let him in carelessly, the living room door opened and Diana walked in. "What are you doing here? Do you remember what you said to us? That we were worthless because we were ordinary? Just you being here makes me sick. Leave now. Mom's having a hard time," Diana said coldly, looking down at Howard. "Oh, welcome back, Diana. You must be tired from work. Sorry, this guest will leave soon." Diana. "Is that you? I can't believe how beautiful you've become. You've grown so much." Howard looked up to confirm it was Diana. It was understandable if he didn't recognize her at first. The last time he saw her, she was still in elementary school. Since then, she had grown significantly taller and had even surpassed my height. In reality, Diana is currently making the most of her good looks, attending university while also thriving as a popular model and advertising ambassador for various companies. Lately, she appears frequently in commercials, and there's hardly a day when she isn't seen on TV. Naturally, I've also employed her in my company, where she has significantly contributed to our success. Howard seemed quite astonished when he realized this. "I had no idea that the model I see on TV was Diana. Hey, Diana, could you please ask your mom to help me out? I really need to work at her company." Howard pleaded again. "Weren't you listening? I'll never forget what you said when Mom divorced you. You said that a loving mother like her was a nuisance to you. Now, I return those words to you. A failure who got fired from his job is worthless to us. But there are many more capable and respectable employees at Mom's company than you. We don't need you there. So, just leave. And never come near Mom and me again." Diana shouted at Howard with a commanding presence, undoubtedly honed from her experience in the entertainment industry. As I admired her poise, the living room door opened again, and someone else walked in. "Dad, this is embarrassing. Everyone is uncomfortable, so please go home."
Jewel! Why is Jewel here?
Seeing Howard's surprise, I decided to reveal the secret I had kept. "Actually, I've been in contact with Jewel via smartphone since our divorce. During her troubled times, I couldn't reach her and was worried. But after leaving your house, she turned to me. We've been living together for years now. She works at my company and is Diana's manager." "Is that true?" "Jewel was only rebelling against you. After she came to live with me, she quickly straightened out and has become a wonderful young woman. She's very smart and a valuable asset to our company. She's brought in a lot of business, and I'm truly grateful to her." Howard's face turned pale.
"I hated living with you, Grandma, Grandpa, and your mistress. It was all about studying without a shred of love. I'm so glad I left. We're happy now. So, get out."
I felt immense joy knowing that Jewel and Diana were standing up for me. However, Howard wasn't listening to them and instead showed an attitude of trying to persuade them.
"No matter what insults you throw at me, I won't give up. Please hire me. Let's all live together again. Then everyone will be happy, right? I won't leave until you say yes."
As he started spouting more troublesome demands, Diana immediately called the apartment's security office. "Hello, security? An intruder has forced his way into our apartment. Please come quickly."
"What are you doing? Damn it! Give me that.
Howard tried to grab the phone from Diana, but she had already made the call. "Howard, just like Diana and Jewel said, we don't need you anymore. Please leave quietly." My words only seemed to make things worse.
Why don't you understand when I'm asking so nicely? I have no place to go, no money.
Howard screamed in desperation, and just then, the security guards arrived. Despite Howard's fierce resistance, he stood no chance against the much larger security guards and was quickly escorted out of the high-rise apartment. Afterward, Howard continued doing manual labor. However, none of the jobs lasted long, and he ended up accumulating more debt, now living a life constantly chased by creditors. Once, I saw Howard even more disheveled, sleeping in a park. I pretended not to notice him and walked away without saying a word. After the incident where Howard attacked us, Diana had been furious with me, saying,
"Letting a homeless ex-husband into the house is far too reckless."
If I approached him again, it would cause more trouble for Jewel and Diana. In my heart, I muttered, "This is your responsibility," and left the park.
I was so shocked when Dad attacked us that time. He never expected Jewel to be there. Remembering his surprised face still makes me laugh. You're both at an age where you could easily attract the wrong kind of guy. So be careful, okay? Now, where should we go for our next trip?
Recently, we've developed a hobby of traveling abroad. Although we've been incredibly busy, we've finally started finding some free time, so Jewel, Diana, and I have been going on trips together. This year, we're planning to spend the long New Year holidays in Hawaii. We've faced many difficulties, but we will continue to support each other and live our lives together. Looking forward to planning our next trip after finishing my work, I put my energy into today's tasks.
Tom, the car I left with you is surrounded by iron bars.
I got a call from my brother Tom, who said he was back from his overseas assignment after a year to pick up his car. Apparently, he had left his car parked in the parking lot of the hotel I run.
What?
I don't see any such car at my hotel.
Where did you park it?
In the parking lot. Under the oak tree.
What? The old hotel? I sold it and relocated 10 years ago. What?
I heard that hotel was sold to some gangsters.
You! Unauthorized parking!
I hear a terrifying voice over the phone.
No,
Tom's voice trembles with fear. I imagine him surrounded by gangsters. This is the retribution for treating me like a slave since I was little. I don't care what happens to him. My name is Maria. I'm a 42-year-old working housewife. My family has been running this hotel since my father's grandmother's generation. Needless to say, it's quite popular, and we're sometimes fully booked during the busy season. However, the recent social situation has hit us with a recession as well. We've finally started to bounce back recently, and my parents and I have talked about how glad we are that we persevered. By the way, my husband Mike and I are planning to take over this hotel in the future. That's why both Mike and I are strictly educated by our parents every day. The work is very hard, but the words from our guests, like,
"This is a really nice hotel,"
or,
"Thank you, I'll come again,"
give me the encouragement to keep going. Now I work as the hotel's successor, but I used to be a child running around like Tom's slave. My brother Tom, who is 3 years older than me, is quite a strong-willed person. He can't stand not being number one and thinks that all of our parents' love should be focused on him. But naturally, our parents loved us equally without any sibling discrimination. Tom didn't like that. Of course, when you do something wrong, you get scolded, but Tom would push his mistakes onto me. And he would deliberately do bad things. For example, he would sneak into a guest room that we were told not to enter, eat snacks in a beautifully cleaned room, or bring in toys and scatter them around. He would even destroy the room's amenities. He even broke the window glass of a room that was famous for its magnificent view of the courtyard. Tom was constantly doing things, from malicious to petty mischief. And he would blame it all on me, saying, "Maria did it." At first, even my parents believed Tom's words and scolded me, but if that kept happening, they would surely think it was strange. The decisive factor was when Tom came in while I was helping my mother clean and said,
"Maria broke the room amenities again."
There's no way I could have done that when I was with my mother the whole time. At that point, his misdeeds were fully exposed, and he was severely scolded by our parents. From then on, Tom became even more stubborn and completely treated me as the bad guy. He would make false accusations like,
"It's your fault I got scolded,"
and say,
"If you feel bad about it, do as I say."
Among older siblings, there are some who act overly bossy towards their younger siblings. And younger siblings are weak against such older siblings. Yes, I too was at the mercy of my older brother Tom. As a child, he seemed like an absolute existence to me. If he said, "Give me your snacks, Maria," I would think I had to hand them over. If he said, "Massage my shoulders," I would massage them. If he said,
"Clean my room,"
I would clean it. When our parents were busy during the peak season, I was often left alone with him. The money our parents gave us, saying, "Buy your dinner with this," would naturally be used entirely by him.
"What's yours is all mine."
When you actually hear those words, you realize how cruel they are. When I was in the upper grades of elementary school, I finally realized that he was being ridiculous and started to rebel more. If he didn't like that, when I got good grades on a test, he would say,
"You must have cheated," and tear up the test.
If I prepared for school the day before, the next morning I would sometimes find my textbooks and notebooks scattered around or thrown in the trash. I wanted to talk to my parents about it, but I couldn't bring it up to them when they were so busy. As we grew up, Tom's bullying also grew more sophisticated, and he would do it in ways that our parents wouldn't notice. Thinking he wouldn't get caught, he kept escalating. He even started stealing my things more often. If I got a new toy, it would quickly disappear, and I would often find it in his room later. Even if I accused him, he wouldn't admit he did it, saying,
"You must have left it there herself."
By middle school, I had become more cautious, but one day my wallet was stolen when he entered my room without permission. My piggy bank also disappeared. Furious and at my limit, I stormed into his room screaming. And we got into a huge fight, grappling with each other. Our parents were flustered, wondering what was going on, and Tom kept insisting he did nothing wrong. So I begged my parents to put a lock on my bedroom door. He complained, but he couldn't explain to our parents why he was complaining. Thanks to the lock, I finally had some peace. Then when Tom graduated from college and moved out, and complete peace finally arrived. By that time, I had already graduated from high school and was helping my parents. I hadn't really thought about taking over the hotel yet, but Tom had said, "I'm not going to inherit this old hotel." So I kind of figured that's how it would turn out. My parents said it was okay if I didn't want to take over if I had something else I wanted to do, but I found the hotel work more enjoyable than I had expected. I guess it suits me. As for Tom, he got a job in the trading industry and lives far away. He got married in his mid-20s, but I rarely see his wife Emma either. However, they come to visit about once a year, and when they do, they stay at the hotel, not at their parents' house. I don't mind that in itself, and if my parents say it's okay, I don't care if they stay for free. But the problem is Tom and Emma's attitude during those times. They are a well-matched couple, and they are fussy and shameless. First of all, they won't be satisfied unless they get the most luxurious room. Even with the recession, the best rooms tend to fill up with reservations mysteriously, and at our hotel, the top-tier rooms are always fully booked on weekdays. There's no way we can let Tom and Emma, who often come back suddenly without notice, stay in those rooms. Our parents suggest a different room, wondering if that would work. What do you think happens then? Incredibly, they throw a fit and go yelling at the guests staying in the nice rooms.
"It's your fault we can't stay here,"
they shouted, making a huge scene. The guests who had made reservations and come to stay were furious. Of course they were. My parents and all of our staff desperately apologized and somehow got them to forgive us. But far from apologizing, they had the nerve to say, "It's their fault for getting in our way." Even my father was enraged by this and declared that he would never let them stay at the hotel again. They got angry in return and said,
"We won't let you see your grandchildren even if we have any."
After that, we became completely estranged from Tom and Emma. Fortunately, aside from my parents, no one, including myself, was sad that Tom and Emma stopped coming. Everyone was fed up with how they would act like they were some kind of royalty and order us around every time they came. If anything, we were grateful they stopped coming. And so, peace came to me, the younger sister, and the hotel for over a decade. Just when we had completely forgotten about Tom and Emma's existence, the two of them caused trouble again. One day, Tom suddenly called me. "I'm being sent overseas for work," he said. "What?" I thought, tilting my head in confusion. "I don't know how many years it'll be until I come back, so take care of my car." "What? Why don't you just take your car with you on your assignment?" "The procedures are a hassle and it costs money." "I might consider it if you take care of everything for me, though."
"Of course I don't want to do that. Why should I have to?"
"Then take responsibility and look after my car." I don't understand what he means. Take responsibility for what? Why do I have to look after his car when he's contacting me for the first time in over a decade? But before I could refuse, Tom said, "All right, I'll bring it to the hotel parking lot tomorrow. Thanks in advance."
"Hey, wait a minute. Don't do that. It's a nuisance." "Shut up. It's because you said you won't do anything. It's your fault, so don't complain."
Why am I being made out to be the bad one? Before I could argue back, Tom said what he wanted to say and hung up. Even after more than 10 years, he is still the same, making me both angry and exasperated.
"That idiot!"
My father was also furious when he heard the story. By the way, Tom and Emma had said they wouldn't let us see our grandchildren, but we haven't heard anything about them having kids since then. And I married Mike, who works and lives at our place, and I'm now a mother of 2. In other words, my parents are happy living together with their grandchildren. Their scheme to make my parents sad easily fell apart. Not only that, but when Tom had the nerve to say such presumptuous things on the phone after so long, my parents were enraged.
"If he comes tomorrow, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind,"
my father said, seething with anger. But Tom must have anticipated that, because a few days later he sneakily called to say, "I left the car there. The key is hidden under the bumper, so find it.
"At least come and greet us properly."
Why do I have to do such a troublesome thing? Listen, don't you dare drive the car. Make sure to wash it once a week." He made all sorts of selfish demands and then said, "I'm leaving tomorrow, so goodbye," and hung up. What is wrong with this brother of mine? And then the months and years flew by. It's been a year since he was sent overseas. Long after I had completely forgotten about him, my phone rang. It's from some guy named Tom, but who was that again?
"It's your older brother, right?"
Oh, that's right, Mike said with a wry smile. Let's ignore it. I put down my phone, thinking there was no need to answer, but Tom didn't give up either. He must have intended to keep calling until I picked up, because it kept ringing forever. So I switched it to voicemail and it stopped. I felt relieved, but then he called right back. If he kept doing that endlessly, of course I would get fed up and say, "Ugh, enough already." I steeled myself and answered the phone. "You're late. Do you have any idea how many times I called? When your own brother calls, you should pick up on the first ring." I couldn't help but feel irritated. It seemed like he didn't hear that, and Tom started over, saying, "Whatever. Let me get to the point. About the car, I guess I should thank you for keeping it. I finished my overseas assignment and got back yesterday." "Is that so?" I replied half-heartedly. "So I'm coming to pick up the car." "What? You washed it once a week like I told you, right? The battery is probably dead, so have a jump starter ready. You should at least have that much." "I mean, I do, but..." "Tom, what are you talking about?" "Huh? I'm telling you, I'm coming to get the car." "Where did you leave the car?" "What? Where else but the hotel parking lot?" Tom insists he parked it there, but Tom's car is nowhere to be found in either our hotel's guest parking or staff parking. When Tom contacted me a year ago saying he left the car, I checked the parking lot but couldn't find it anywhere. My parents and I ended up figuring he must have changed his mind about leaving it after all. No one wanted to contact Tom, so we never followed up with a confirmation call. But now, a year later, Tom is saying he's coming to pick up the car. What in the world is he talking about? "What are you saying?" "It's my car, my car. The bright red one." Guests sometimes drive bright red cars, but there aren't any cars that have been left abandoned for a whole year. "Don't lie to me." "Even if you yell at me, I don't know what I don't know. If you come here and check, you'll see for yourself." "Fine. I'll be there tomorrow, so wait for me. If you sold it without permission, I won't forgive you." Why would I ever do that? Before I could say, "I'm not like you, Tom," he had already hung up. What the heck is going on? I honestly have no idea what he is talking about. More than that, the thought of Tom coming tomorrow made me feel gloomy and heavy-hearted. But then the next day came. Evening arrived and Tom still hadn't shown up. It was a weekday and there was still time, but it's not like we had zero guests. We weren't swamped, but there was still a lot to do. I had finally settled down to take a break when my phone rang. It was that devil Tom. I didn't want him interfering with work, so I picked up and was immediately met with yelling. "Hey! What the hell is going on here? What's with you all of a sudden?" "I came to the hotel parking lot, but something seems off." "Huh? Tom, you're here?" I glanced out the window. The parking lot was right past it, but there was no sign of Tom. If he was shouting this loudly, you'd think I could hear him even without the phone. He should have just come directly to the hotel in the first place. Wait, what is this? The hotel is gone. What? Emma? It seemed like she had taken over the phone. Apparently Tom had come with his wife to pick up the car, and they were both shocked. I was wondering what in the world was going on, but Emma's words made it click. What do you mean, the hotel is gone? There's no sign, and the exterior has been remodeled. It looks similar, but it's something else. And there are a bunch of black cars here. What are those? Don't tell me, that place is. I tried to explain, but it seemed like he had handed the phone back to Tom, who yelled again. Explain it to me.
I'm trying to explain, so stop interrupting me. My car is there, but what the heck is that? What do you mean? There's a fence around the car, so I can't move it. It's surrounded, so it can't be removed. Well, if you abandon it for a year, and you were overseas, so they probably couldn't contact the owner. Don't mess with me, Maria. You took down the hotel sign without permission, remodeled it, and trapped my car. Just wait, I'm going to go yell at the hotel staff right now. Tom, wait a minute. Shut up. Ignoring my attempt to stop him, it seemed like Tom had opened the hotel door. The phone was still connected. He must have opened it roughly with a lot of force. I could hear the sound of him running in a panic. Oh no. Tom. Get out here now. Looks like all the staff are completely unfamiliar faces. That's not a hotel anymore. We got rid of that place ages ago. I see, you got rid of it. No wonder I don't know them, huh? I've never heard such a dumb-sounding huh before. Tom must have had the most ridiculously stupid look on his face. I wish I could have seen it. Huh? Got rid of it? What do you mean? I heard Emma's voice too. You see, we relocated about 10 years ago. What? I never heard about that. I thought Mom and Dad had told you. I don't answer when they call because it's annoying. Then it's your fault, Tom. No, it's your fault. I don't care. He still tries to make me the bad guy, as always. So what is this hotel then? We sold it to some rich person. They said they were going to make it a summer retreat. But apparently that person was elderly and let it go. I heard it's been resold since then, but I don't know much about it now. You don't know? How irresponsible. Don't say that to me. But I did hear a rumor recently. Who the heck owns it now? I don't know the details, but apparently it fell into the hands of some dangerous people. Huh? Then, that parking lot is... It must belong to the mafia. You're joking, right? It's true. Screw that. That's when it happened. The voice of someone who seemed to be the current owner, who had been listening to our conversation, or rather Tom's story, spoke up. Hey, you. Are you by any chance the owner of that red car? Tom seemed flustered and thoughtlessly answered honestly. Huh? Oh, yes, I am. Now he's in trouble. Don't screw with me. Whose land do you think this is? Pay the parking fees. I heard a furious voice shouting. Even if it wasn't the mafia, anyone would be angry if a stranger's car was left there without permission for a whole year. Isn't it hard to just move those kinds of things without permission? Because if you damage the car in the process, you become the bad guy. So they must have put up a fence to make sure no one could just drive off with it. I could hear someone who sounded like mafia yelling on the other end of the phone. Tom seemed to be completely cornered. Tom sounded scared as he shouted into the phone. I'm in big trouble because of you. Get over here and explain. Maria, do something about this. He was pleading for help. I immediately said, Oh, I have another call waiting. I'm going to hang up now. And hung up on him. I could hear him yelling, Hey, hey! But I ignored it. That was a waste of time. I looked at the clock and saw that my break was over. I sighed and went back to work. Apparently, Tom contacted our parents after that. He was panicking and flustered. He must have been cornered by some really scary people. But even the mafia can't do anything too crazy these days. Apparently, they offered to let him off if he settled with them or met their conditions. So that's why Tom came crying to our parents. Tom called my dad while I was with my parents.
But my parents have decided not to coddle him anymore. They pushed him away, saying, "You're an adult now. Take responsibility for your own actions." I could hear Tom's wailing voice over the phone on speaker mode. "No way. I'm unemployed now. I don't have any money." "Unemployed?" My parents and I were surprised. "Tom, weren't you on an overseas assignment?" "I got fired."
What?
Apparently, Tom had volunteered for the overseas assignment, but he turned out to be completely useless. Tom has no foreign language skills whatsoever. He didn't even have the minimum skills required for an overseas assignment. I wonder why they sent someone like that overseas, but it's not my place to point that out. Tom probably told the company something like, "French? No problem for a talented guy like me." As a result, he couldn't communicate with clients, and in the end, he snapped at them and yelled, infuriating them. A big contract that was about to be finalized fell through, and he was fired for causing damage to the company. The overseas assignment was supposed to last several years, but there was a reason he came back after just 1 year. In other words, there was a possibility of unauthorized parking for a few more years. It's a terribly chilling story. "I thought I could get some money if I sold the car." Tom sounded dejected over the phone. None of us listening had any reaction.
"In any case, it's your responsibility. Figure it out yourself,"
my father said and hung up the phone. I guess this is where we have to harden our hearts. But to think he didn't know we had sold the hotel. I wonder why he didn't notice when he came to leave his car, but Tom, who probably came sneakily thinking Dad might get mad at him, must not have paid any attention to the state of the hotel at all. We sold the place when the economy was bad and guests were dwindling. We decided to make a fresh start and built a new hotel in a new location. At that point, my parents retired. Mike and I took over and started running the hotel. My parents help us out by looking after the kids and stuff. Thanks to that, it's been 10 years since we relocated and the hotel business is going well. I thought maybe Tom would learn his lesson and settle down a bit, and it felt like a weight off my shoulders. But it didn't end there. After a while, Tom and his wife showed up. Apparently, they found our new location right away.
"Hey, do something about this."
He barged in and started yelling immediately. It seems the mafia is really putting the pressure on him. However, the one being blamed is Tom for unauthorized parking. If he gets sued, he definitely won't be able to run away. As I was thinking about this, I saw a dark shadow move behind Tom and his wife.
What? What is it?
A chill ran down my spine. There were scary-looking people in black suits and sunglasses, probably mafia, squirming around.
"Because of you, I lost my job, I'm being threatened by these people, and I'm even being sued. Take responsibility. Our lives are a mess because of you and your family."
This couple just wants to blame others for everything. Everything is Tom's fault, isn't it? But this is troubling. If they make a scene at the hotel entrance, it'll interfere with business. What a nuisance. But calling the police is also a headache because it's a family matter and it could affect the hotel's image. As I was worrying, Tom and his wife closed in on me. Unfortunately, Mike was out, and my parents were in a house a short distance away. Tom and his wife kept repeating that it was my fault, not caring at all.
"Unemployed because of you. Worse luck because of you. Can't get my car back because of you. Can't fix my slouching posture all because of you, Maria."
How does that even make sense? That last one about the slouching posture has nothing to do with me at all. Tom wants to blame me for everything bad.
"This hotel is mine because it's your fault."
He finally went that far. The mafia guys are nodding. Tom, cornered by these people, must have told them about our hotel and ordered them to take it over. Huh? What are you saying?
Mike and I run this hotel. I'm the older brother, the firstborn son. It's only natural that I inherit this hotel. A good-for-nothing woman like you shouldn't butt in.
What?
Listen up. If you leave it to me, I'll quickly turn this hotel into a popular, high-class hotel in no time. Just let me handle it. I'll double the sales in a year.
Don't screw with me.
Don't say whatever you want when you know nothing about this hotel. Maria, are you defying me?
Tom threatened me in a low voice as I argued back. The mafia backed him up. My body tensed up. But I had become strong. I'm not the weak me who would do whatever he said anymore. But the ingrained memories are surprisingly deep-rooted, and my body reacts to Tom's terrifying voice. I'm frozen and can't move. Unpleasant sweat runs down my body.
Fine, go ahead and defy me. But you don't care what happens to the hotel, right?
The guys behind me won't stay quiet either. What are you?
I have nothing left to lose. In this day and age, if I flood the internet with bad reviews, a hotel like this will go under in no time.
What did you say? Even though we relocated, the hotel name is the same as before. We've tried to carry on the desire to let guests enjoy themselves since the hotel's founding. Is Tom saying he'll ruin this hotel, the one that's been in our family since our grandmother's generation? He is grinning nastily. Those eyes are serious. It's the same old Tom who used to harass me. The Tom who stole and took my things. Are you trying to take something precious from me again? I can't hand over the hotel to a Tom like this. But if I oppose him and he throws a tantrum or spreads rumors, what will happen to us? Tears welled up in my eyes as no good ideas came to mind. That's when it happened.
Are you saying the management of this hotel is changing?
A woman's voice came from behind me. I turned around and saw a woman who had been working for us since before we relocated. She stood next to me and glared at Tom and the men in black.
Maria and her husband have been running this hotel with care. Even if you're the previous owner's son, I don't appreciate you meddling. What did you say?
Tom glared back at her with a look that said she was being cheeky, but this veteran who had known us since we were kids didn't back down. Then another figure joined on my other side.
That's right. Maria is doing an excellent job managing the hotel. Our hotel has a very good reputation. Even if you badmouths it, the people who have actually stayed here won't stay quiet.
It was the manager. He had been here even longer, an elderly man with a dignified presence. Many staff members had gathered. Nearly all of our staff. They must have heard the commotion and rushed over.
We won't hand over this hotel, said the veteran woman. It's not your place to interfere, said the manager. This hotel belongs to Maria and her husband.
Everyone chimed in. Tears welled up in my eyes. There are people who acknowledge my hard work like this. What I've been doing all this time wasn't wrong. Come to think of it, my mother scolded me a lot. The longtime staff and manager scolded me a lot too. But I worked hard, determined not to lose. I desperately thought about how to make a hotel that guests would enjoy. I felt like all that hard work had paid off. Holding back the tears that threatened to spill over, I glared at Tom and his wife. I won't lose anymore. I won't look back at the past anymore. Please leave, I said firmly to Tom. Tom's eyes widened and he growled. I didn't flinch an inch. It was a tense situation, but immediately after,
"Get out!"
a loud voice came from behind me.
"Get out! Get out! I don't know what you're scheming, but you're definitely trying to ruin this hotel. Get out!
It was a hotel guest shouting that.
That's right, that's right. I look forward to healing from work fatigue here more than anything. Like I'll let you interfere with that. Get out!
Another guest shouted.
I like writing my manuscripts leisurely here while gazing at nature in the quiet. If you become the owner, I'm sure it'll be too noisy to write.
I get inspiration for my work here.
Don't interfere. Even if you write bad reviews online, we'll overwrite them with good content.
Guests shouted one after another and confronted Tom. I watched in surprise. The staff next to me were in tears. That's right, it's wonderful. To think there are so many people who love this hotel. This moment is irresistible. Nothing makes me happier than being told we did a good job. It truly brings me joy when people say they'll come again. Glared at by the staff and guests, even Tom and Emma were overwhelmed. The mafia froze too. Then one of the guests stepped forward.
I'm a former detective. Those words just now, could they be a threat?
Tom panicked at the word detective. The mafia also braced themselves.
I didn't mean it like that.
Another guest stepped forward.
I'm a lawyer. If it's a threat, I'll do everything in my power to protect this hotel. So, what'll it be?
Tom and his wife visibly turned pale. They stumbled over each other's feet and ran outside. The mafia followed suit and fled. And he said,
Who would want a place like this? This kind of hotel will go under in no time anyway. That's right, that's right. We have no business with a place like this.
Emma shouted too. And with that, they ran away. The moment Tom, his wife, and the men in black disappeared from view, my strength left me and I sank to the floor. We did it. The guests returned to their rooms as if nothing had happened. I'll have to thank them properly later and make dinner extra luxurious tonight. When I looked at the staff, they were all smiling. I silently nodded and returned their smiles. Amidst the excitement, an out-of-place voice rang out.
Huh? What? What happened?
We laughed again at the stunned look on Mike's face as he finally returned. I don't know what happened to Tom and his wife after that. I'm not sure how the unauthorized parking issue was resolved, as I haven't heard from them since. Tom and his wife will probably never come to our hotel again. It's just a feeling, but I can somehow tell. Whatever happens to Tom, who can only look down on others with his inflated pride, is no longer any of my concern. My parents seem to be worried but don't intend to help. It was Tom and the others who abandoned our parents first. It's their own responsibility. As for me, I'm as busy as ever, running around. Running a hotel is truly challenging and extremely busy. Lately, the kids seem interested too, so they come with their grandparents when there aren't many guests. A brother and sister, 2 kids just like Tom and me. But unlike us, my children get along very well.
Hey, Mom. I love this hotel. I want to work here when I grow up.
My daughter says. Me too. I want to be the manager. My son says, his eyes shining. Mike and I looked at each other and laughed at our children. At that moment, we saw the guests with reservations for today arriving. I hurriedly put on a big smile and cheerfully greeted them.
Welcome. Thank you very much for coming.